Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's today's class. So I am Coach Kayla, a registered dietitian and a certified personal trainer, and today we're going to talk about vitamin D and the sun. So if you don't already know, this month is all about UV awareness, which I think connects really well to vitamin D and the sun. And I know this is a topic that comes up a lot when I'm talking to my nutrition clients about vitamin D. And where they should be getting it from, where they can get it from, especially as somebody that is plant based. So that's what I want to focus on today. So if you are joining me live, let me know. Say hi. Let me know if you are joining me. And thank you for Virtual Veg Fest for allowing me to come on Virtual Veg Fest to do these lives monthly. I will be doing these lives every first Wednesday of the month. So join me then. And I'll be talking about either nutrition or fitness, running related topics. Also, before we get started, just a couple things as well. Thank you to our sponsors as well for Virtual Veg Fest, and also make sure to subscribe to Virtual Veg Fest YouTube channel. And thank you to our sponsor this month, Follow Your Heart. And you can also go to Virtual Veg Fest website and enter their contest for some prizes. So check those out as well. And let me see if I have anybody on here. So I see a couple people, I think, joining us. Thank you for joining us. Glad you are here. So as I said, I'm Coach Kayla, and we're going to be talking about vitamin D. So thank you so much for being here. So vitamin D, what is vitamin D? Why is it important? Why do we even need vitamin D? So vitamin D has a very important function, right? Vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin. It's one of our main vitamins that we need to make sure that we eat, or that we make sure we get in either our diet. And I'll talk about other sources as well that we actually get vitamin D, not just from our diet, but we need vitamin D for healthy bone health. So vitamin D prevents rickets in children and osteoporosis in adults. So it's very important to make sure that you are getting enough vitamin D however you do that. So I'll talk about here a little bit how we can get vitamin D and why. Not only those that are plant-based, which is very common, but also those that even just aren't plant-based also may be deficient in vitamin D, and why that is. So vitamin D, I want to talk about as well how vitamin D is absorbed. So vitamin D is absorbed through our skin. We get most of our vitamin D actually comes from the sun. So some comes from our diets and what we eat, but most of the vitamin D we get is absorbed through our skin, and it comes directly from the sun. Also, the vitamin D that we absorb, that we eat from our foods, that actually helps to absorb it. So that's another reason why we need to make sure we're eating also enough fat. And that's why it's called a fat-soluble vitamin. So fat helps absorb vitamin D. So when I talk about here in a little bit about, food sources of vitamin D, thinking about also making sure you're eating your fats as well. What else? So foods. Let's talk about foods. So vitamin D foods. As I said, most of the vitamin D we get actually comes from the sun. Some of our foods do have vitamin D. If you are plant-based, maybe you're more whole food plant-based and you limit dairy, since dairy is a big source of vitamin D, that's probably not a source for you. So where can you get your vitamin D? Mushrooms is one. Mushrooms actually, they have vitamin D because they are treated with UV light. So as I said, vitamin D, we can get it from the sun. So that's actually why mushrooms have some. So you do want to make sure your mushrooms are treated with UV light. If trying to get more vitamin D, and you use mushrooms. There's also foods that are fortified. So you will see maybe like your non-dairy milk. You may notice that it's fortified with vitamin D. So you will find a lot of those non-dairy products, that cater more towards those people that can't have dairy or vegans, will be fortified with vitamin D. So that's another thing. Helen said that I take a vitamin D3 supplement daily. Is that okay? Yes. And I wanted to talk about supplements as well. So for vitamin D, since as I said, most of us do get it from the sun. And even if you're not plant based, most people actually are deficient in vitamin D. And as I said, vitamin D is important for bone health. So we want to make sure we're getting enough. But because most of us, or many of us, if you live in the northern hemisphere, you may not be out in the sun a lot and get a lot of sun. So even if you're not plant-based, you may not be getting enough vitamin D because of that. And I have found too, I'm in Florida now, I have clients that are still deficient in vitamin D, even in the sunshine state. So vitamin D is just a very common deficiency. So it actually is a very good idea to take a vegan D3 supplement. And you do want to take that every day. The amount that's recommended is 15 micrograms a day. That is what the recommended amount of vitamin D. You might find that your vitamin D3 supplement, it might have more, and that is because of the absorption rate. So that's why the supplements, they actually put a lot more in them than what's actually recommended. So don't let that scare you. But there is an upper limit. So you also don't want to overload on vitamin D either. So you do want to be careful with that. Look at your supplements, make sure you're not doubling up any of that stuff. And for supplements, there are vegan, as Helene said, there are vegan D3 supplements. You do want to make sure that it is vegan. Vitamin D can come from or animal sources, right? So we do want to make sure that it is a vegan D3. I recommend the Garden of Life. That's a great one. They also have sprays, which I really like because it helps you to absorb a little bit better. So I really like those. And also for those that, struggle with taking supplements or pills, easy way to get that vitamin D. Let's see what else. So I said there's an upper limit as well. Oh, and then sun. So to get enough vitamin D, because I get this question a lot as well, is how much time in the sun do I need to get my recommended amount of vitamin D, if that's the way, if you didn't want to take a supplement. So all you need is 10 to 15 minutes, not a lot of time out in the sun. Obviously, sun is, can be damaging to our skin if we're out in the sun for a long time. That sunburn can lead to skin cancer, right? So we do want to be careful, but you do want to make sure that if you are getting sun for vitamin D, to not wear sunscreen. So that's why I also say you only need 10 to 15 minutes is really all you need without sunscreen to be able to absorb some vitamin D. Helene said, thankfully my vitamin D level is sufficient. It's been deficient. Awesome. So I'm glad that is corrected and it's good. Yeah, definitely keep taking that supplement. Vitamin D is one that usually is routinely checked from your doctor if you go get blood work done. So it's not one you usually have to ask for, to see if it's good, or ask your doctor to make sure to check that. They usually do check vitamin D because it's so common to be deficient in it. So with all of that, is there any questions? Does anyone have any questions about vitamin D, the sun? But as I said, the best source to get our vitamin D is either 10 to 15 minutes without sunscreen on daily in the sun, or taking a vegan D3 supplement. And most people, I would say most of my clients do take a vegan D3 supplement. That is one that I usually do recommend to everybody to have. Because as I said, even living in the Sunshine State, I've had clients that come in and they are deficient in vitamin D, even living here in Florida. Hi, Joyce. Thanks for joining. So glad you're here talking about clients. Joyce is actually one of my clients that is in Florida here. So awesome that you're on today. So we're talking about all about vitamin D and the sun, since this month is UV Awareness Month. So we wanted to talk about vitamin D and the sun and all of that stuff. So the sun is not all that bad. Sun, is still some good for us, right? And we do know the sun is good for depression, and that has a lot to actually do with vitamin D. So because the sun has vitamin D, it's good to also help depression. And those of you that are from the northern hemisphere probably understand seasonal depression disorder, right? And that is a real thing. And because you may not have a lot of sun, you're not getting enough vitamin D. So because you're deficient in vitamin D, can lead to things like depression. So that's another thing, and another reason too, to make sure you're getting enough vitamin D and at least getting those 10 to 15 minutes a day without sunscreen outside in the sun. Obviously, we don't want to stay outside too long without sunscreen because that would hurt our skin, but it is recommended that we do get some sun for our vitamin D. So, any questions related to vitamin D, the sun, supplements, all of that stuff, how much you should be taking, how much you should be eating, all of that. And I do have a list. So, if anybody's interested in, wanting to know, there's not a lot of vitamin D plant-based foods, but I do have a list of some. So if you're interested in that as well, I can send that your way as well. Okay, any questions? All right. Well, thank you so much for those of you that joined me live. If you do have any further questions, feel free to comment below. I'll try to circle back and find this video and answer your questions, or make sure to tag me so I can get back to your questions. Again, thank you so much for our sponsors, Follow Your Heart and Virtual Veg Fest, for allowing me to be here and having this opportunity to talk to all of you. So I hope you got something out of this, and I hope that you join me not next Wednesday, but next month, the first Wednesday of the month, I'll be going live again. So hopefully you will join me again, and I will see you then. Bye.